We destroy everything.
I came face to face with one of them. I moved among them.
When Fear the Walking Dead ended, I wasn't sure if I was going to make a video about it again. When they brought Troy back, even with all of its typical Fear silliness, I felt like they understood how to give the show some of its soul back. But they brought him back to kill him even worse in another one of their attempts to be profound. They thought they ended the show on a good note, but it ended how Fear had went on since season 4, trying to be profound, but actually just being stupid. It made me sad, not because of some meaningful fate, but because the show just never consistently got better. When it improved, it self-destructed again. The first 3 seasons of Fear, it was its own show with its own identity, while still being so heavily rooted in The Walking Dead. But after the showrunner of those seasons, Dave Erickson, left, its identity in season 4 was mushed down into being The Walking Dead's weird cousin. As much as I love Morgan, when he crossed over, he brought everything that didn't work in The Walking Dead with him, and so began season after season of the characters not feeling as real. The soppiness that plagued the bad parts of the main show was now all Fear was about. But it wasn't always meant to go like this. Fear was meant to go on as its own show, telling the full story of the Clark family. Morgan was meant to stay in The Walking Dead and live out his own story. Fortunately, the original showrunner Dave Erickson has said what would have happened if he hadn't left, and there wasn't that soft reboot. This is what was meant to happen in Fear the Walking Dead. From the start, Fear the Walking Dead was about the Clark family, even after what happened to Travis.
Help me.
This was most of the identity of the show itself. If Dave Erickson remained showrunner, I think the core focus of the whole show would have been this trio. It is said that Frank Delane, the actor for Nick, wanted to leave, and that's why Nick was killed off, but what if he wanted to leave because the showrunner was leaving? I mean, he kind of says it here in his quote about leaving. It contributed into why he felt it was time. When he wanted to leave, this was at the exact same time that Andrew Lincoln did. Rick got sent off. Could they not have just sent off Nick? One of their best, most unique characters too. Both started out in their hospital beds, their names even rhyme. Rick should have woken up in that first Rick Grimes movie and saw Nick as a patient beside him. It's really upsetting that they let him go to waste.
Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
They'd rather do a rom-com where Michonne walks in like a Teletubby and holds Rick's hand through any possible cool story at the CRM. If it hadn't been rebooted, Madison would not have fake died, and Althea and John wouldn't exist. Althea was horrible with her insufferable camera antics, and John was a cool character for a bit with his own quirks.
There's the candy for you.
I'd like to get out of here, please.
But died stupidly, and the only thing on the show that made you think maybe his existence wasn't pointless was his dad, John Dory Sr. Even he was ruined into some bickering idiot in, you guessed it, another attempt at being profound.
Gotta cement my legacy that you're gonna help me.
But if Fear wasn't rebooted, these characters would not exist. On the bright side, one of Erickson's season 3 characters, Walker, would have probably played a part down the line. But Dave Erickson had a vision for the show, and from season 4 to 7, he wanted to have it so that Madison transformed from high school counselor into an anti-hero and then into a villain over 7 seasons. Alicia sticking around, but Nick feeling more and more of an outcast. Which does make me think of that theory of Madison and Nick going on to be Alpha and Beta. I think people really overestimate how much they write ahead of time. A lot changes, it's insane. Accurate. I think the craziest thing is Nick literally learning how to be like a Walker, becoming them. Everything he says is like a Beta origin story.
We destroy everything.
They could have been setting it up.
Like who I'll be is just closing in on me, just suffocating me.
The scenes where Nick is walking in a herd are really similar, if not the exact same, as what Beta had in the main show, and they both look extremely similar to Alpha and Beta in the comics. Of course, with Beta being a bit more slender in the comics than what we got in the show. He's got the same hair. Madison has the same jawline. Alicia would have been Lydia. The Lydia that we got in the show also has a stupid wooden hand, like Alicia does, which is a really weird coincidence. And what's crazy is, as soon as Alpha and Beta were cast, they were killed off. Of course, this is a big leap, and we can't say for sure they were going to be the Whisperers, but what we do know for sure is that the showrunner did want Madison to become the villain. He even used Negan as an example of what she was going to go on to do. He also said he was somewhat setting up Proctor John, so I think we would have seen him with his own bigger communities, which makes me think with Madison inevitably becoming the antagonist, Proctor John would have a war with Madison, where she would defeat them by the end of season 4, and this is where her being a villain would become more clear, as the leader of this big community should start making reckless, aggressive choices which Strand and encourages, our characters like Daniel and Nick become cautious of it, which was foreshadowed at the end of season 3 because they were both together. Daniel, of course, would be especially wary of Madison, with him still in mourning over Ophelia. He's already bitter about it.
Get away from us, or I kill you.
He'd view Madison the same way that Mike did with Walter in Breaking Bad. I think Madison would start to do even more ominous stuff as the seasons went on, and with Daniel being the Daniel that we knew when Erickson was the showrunner, with Daniel's background of working for the wrong people, I think he'd try and put a stop to it. He'd see it as Madison playing around with people's lives, and not giving people choices, like the way she decided that Troy should be put down, not being that good of a leader as even he thought she would be, and Madison would probably take him out, or he'd be put in a cell.
Somebody's trying to make me look bad. Beach ball.
It's this bad stuff that she starts to do that, in addition to what she did to Troy, would make viewers start to see her as the villain that she would become. And with Erickson saying that Madison would become almost the Negan of fear, what if Daniel, the character that he was, is the price of that? I mean, you know, we lost Abraham because he was the strongest, he was the only one that didn't stand down. Daniel wouldn't stand down. Maybe that is who she kills in some lineup with her hammer. And you might think, well, Madison isn't funny or as likeable. But what made Negan work is he was funny, he was likeable, but also scary. So what is that thing to balance her out to make her even anything like what Negan was to the main show for a bit? She starts doing stuff that the viewers disagree with. They see her as a villain. What does she do? Where's the balance? Well, the balance is she used to be the protagonist of the show. We don't really want to see her go, but she starts doing stuff that makes her appear as someone that has to. She killed Troy. She killed people like Daniel. And of course, the way this scene was done with Troy, he could have always been brought back had they wanted to. I think there's a few ways you could rationalise it. The showrunners that didn't explain it at all. I'd like to think it was something to do with Proctor John, which would have led to a late season 4 or 5 reveal that he's on their side. In season 6, I think it would be Madison at the prime of her villain arc, with Strand, of course, right behind her. Everyone is completely under Madison's control, apart from Nick and Alicia. Troy defeated on Nick and Alicia's side, redeemed as he should have. Dave Erickson said season 7 would have likely been the final season, and I think it would have been Alicia and Nick versus Madison.
So where does it stop? You saw it in your eyes when you went after Troy. You're what's dangerous.
One day you'll have no choice.
That's the scary part. One day I'll have no choice. Because one day, Mom, you may have no choice with me.
But I think Alicia would kill Madison and become the leader. I feel like they were showing she was going to be the leader of the show, with her kind of starting off as the brat of the show, but then doing more responsible things and being capable of leading people. And at the end of Fear, she would take their people to the Commonwealth after hearing a radio broadcast, which I think was always the way. Before The Walking Dead started convoluting stuff, like in the spin-off shows now, it's never straightforward. There's always something they've got to twist and turn to get you excited. I don't think they ever have to do that. It would be exciting enough if they just make it more clear that certain stuff is going to happen, rather than making people unsure because of how disappointing they've been previously. And remember, the showrunner said season 7 was likely going to be the final season. Fear season 7 finished in 2022, so before or after the main show ended, Fear would have crossed over, and so all surviving Fear characters and their people make it to the Commonwealth in The Walking Dead. What a sensible and amazing story that would be. It's something as subtle and straightforward like this that I think Dave Erickson would have done. Something just as exciting as Morgan Jones might have stayed in the main show. As much as I loved him in Fear, I think Morgan and the Whisperers is something that beats anything he did in Fear. It would have been amazing to have him step up while Rick, etc. was gone. Just imagine Morgan talking to Daryl, telling him to come back home. Remember when Morgan said,
People wearing dead people's faces!
Imagine how poetic it would be for him to see people wearing walker skins, for him to meet or fight Beta, for him to talk to Alpha. He'd see that she was mad and say that he's been there before. He'd get through to her.
She's my daughter. She's my baby. I could not get her.
I know it's how it is. I do.
And probably not even want Negan to kill her. He'd complain to Carol later that there was another way. Carol would say there wasn't. Morgan being in the show still would have given it so much more soul that I thought was sorely missing in season 11. But there's always the future. While Morgan and Rick are in limbo right now, we're clearly going to see them again. Maggie rejoined the show after the Whisperers and she still saw them. She still wore one of the masks. And long after the Whisperers arc was done, they were still running into them. So Morgan seeing some Whisperers, using or seeing a mask, can still happen. But what do you think? Would you prefer if this really happened with Fear and with Morgan being in the main show? What do you think would have happened? Let me know what you think down below. And if you haven't already, check out my recent video on there potentially being a Telltale Games The Walking Dead sequel, how it could happen and what it could be about. Of course, press the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.
And what is your safe place in the world?
Probably my own head.
Why?
Because no one else can get in there.